Hello and welcome to this tutorial on DIP or Dependency Inversion Principle. My name is Arjun Thakur and you are watching TechProSchool. Let's get started. So we will not go by the bookish definition of the DIP. Rather, what we will do is we will take a design, understand what are the problems without DIP or Dependency Inversion Principle. Then we refactor that design a bit and write a new improved design with the help of Dependency Inversion Principle. And finally, we will write some code. So dependency inversion principle simply says that high-level modules should not depend on the low-level modules, which may not make a lot of sense. So that's why what we are going to do is to take an example of a simple real-world software design. Then we will figure out what are the shortcomings and how we can remove them with the help of DIP. Finally, we will write some production ready code so that we can actually understand the implementation of DIP and we can compare how the code looks like before DIP and after DIP. So while developing some of the microservices from scratch, I have actually come across the scenarios where I had to implement dependency inversion principle in production. So I will take a similar example over here. So over here we have two different services or two different classes. One is user service. So what the user service does is it has a sign up method. So whenever a new user is registered, the sign up method will be called. Now what this sign up needs to do is to send a welcome message to the user. Now of course the user service cannot send email. So for that we have something called a Gmail service class. Right. So whenever the user service needs to send an email, what it needs to do is in the sign up method, it will call send email so that the email can be sent. Essentially what I'm trying to say here is the user service object will have a dependency of this Gmail service object. In other words, the user service object will need an object of Gmail service for its proper functionality. So far so good. Now let's say your company or you yourself decide that you don't want to use Gmail or Google as your email provider anymore. What you want rather is to use another email service. So let's say now you want to use Outlook service. What will happen is you will have to remove the dependency of Gmail service from your user service, right? And now you will have to add the dependency of Outlook service in here. Now you might ask, what's the problem with that? See, the problem is you are just changing the implementation of how you send the email. You are switching from Gmail to Outlook. In this process, your user service class should not be changed because user service is just signing up. It has nothing to do with how the emails are sent. In other words, your user service class is tightly coupled with the email implementation, which is a problem. Why? Why it is a problem? It is a problem because it violates a few principles. Let's say it violates single responsibility principle, which says that a class should have only one reason to change. Now your class user service is being changed unnecessarily because of the email implementation. Another problem is it will be hard to maintain the user service class because every time there is some change externally in the email implementation, your user service will have to change. So this is the problem, right? So essentially the problem is, if you want to formally define it, the problem is your high level modules, which is user service in this case, is dependent on the low level module, which is Gmail service. That is the problem. In other words, the problem is your interfaces are dependent on the implementation of how Gmail is sending an email and implementation of how Outlook is sending an email. Ideally, user service should not be aware of the internal details of whether we are using Gmail service or Outlook service. But right now, that is the problem. Now, what does the dependency inversion principle say? So the principle says that high-level modules should not depend on the low-level module, or the abstractions should not depend on the implementation. In other words, we should try to program to the interface rather than to the implementation. So in here, instead of having instead of having Outlook service or Gmail service object inside the user service, what we really need to do over here is to give an object of email service to the user service, so that the user service is loosely coupled with the email service, right? So now let's say we have another email service implementation, let's say XML service. The user service should be able to use it without making any change in itself, as long as this XML is implementing from email service, right? So what we will now do is we will make the user service dependent on the email service rather than on any of the specific implementation. If we are able to do that, then our code will be very much flexible and we would be able to use any implementation of the email service. So that's the theoretical part of the dependency inversion principle. I hope that makes sense. In the next tutorial, we will code all these scenarios live. So in the live coding, you will see what are the problems before applying DIP and how the code becomes more elegant and easy to maintain after applying the dependency inversion principle. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.